Let's take a closer look at the new Bugatti Tourbillon. On the first look it seems like a Chiron facelift, but if we look again everything is different and there's a lot to talk about. But to understand the car we need to understand its background first. In 1997, Ferdinand Piëch, grandson of Ferdinand Porsche and at the time CEO of VW, spent his Easter holidays on the Spanish island Mallorca. He went to a small shop to get a newspaper because VW was in discussions to buy Rolls-Royce and Bentley, and the papers reported about it. There were also scale models and he showed his youngest son Gregor a Rolls-Royce. But he was more interested in the car next to it, a Bugatti Atlantique. That sparked the idea for Piëch to buy Bugatti, just in case something goes wrong with the Bentley deal, so that he still has a luxury brand within VW. And if VW could buy Bentley, he would position Bugatti a lot higher. And we all know what happened. VW bought Bentley and Bugatti and developed the absolute top end of car engineering, the Bugatti Veyron. For more information on this, check out my other video. The plan for the Veyron was to be released in 2002, the last year with Piëch as CEO. But the development of the Veyron was very complex and they delayed the release a couple of times. It finally came out in 2005 and it was worth the wait. The car had a starting price of 1.3 million euro and over the next 10 years they sold 450 Veyrons, a lot of them in more expensive special versions. But they couldn't earn money with it. The initial development costs were too high. The Veyron for VW was to prove their technical competency, and it was estimated that they lost more than 4 million euro per car. They stopped production after 10 years and presented the successor in 2016, the Chiron. Piëch was still member of the board and didn't like to see Bugatti go. So the company tried to earn as much with the existing, still impressive technical basis as possible. The Chiron used the same chassis and drivetrain and was basically a big facelift of the Veyron. Additionally, they increased the base price to 2.6 million euro and sold many special versions of the car, now even with different bodyworks. But the technology underneath was always the same. So the development costs were kept low while the income increased. But now after selling the same concept for almost 20 years, it was time to develop something new and something with less emissions. With the emissions scandal from 2015 and Piëch's passing in 2019, the VW Group decided to sell Bugatti, because huge investments would be necessary now. In the eyes of the board, Bugatti should become a high-performance electric brand. The best candidate to achieve this was Rimac. The idea was that Rimac could just take their proven Nevera basis and put a Bugatti bodywork around it. So VW would earn some money from selling the brand, and for little money Bugatti could have been transformed to an electric brand. And now CEO Mate Rimac comes into play. Bugatti is on his own now and he thought it would be a mistake to make Bugatti fully electric. Clear was that the car must be able to drive electrically, to massively reduce emissions in the test cycle. As we discussed in my earlier videos, the Bugatti concept is closely related to the Lamborghini V12 cars. When VW developed the Veyron, they took the Diablo as role model for the packaging with the gearbox between the passengers, so they have more space for a huge engine and can still have a decent diffuser. Now, to bring Lamborghini into the future, they turned the drivetrain around, have the gearbox behind the engine now and use the tunnel for the battery. Bugatti now did exactly the same. And also like Lamborghini, they used 2 electric motors at the front axle and 1 at the gearbox. The difference is just that the performance figures are on another level. So the electric powertrain of the Tourbillon adds 300 kg to the car. 200 of that are for the battery. And the interesting thing about the battery is that it doesn't have a box. The lower side of the monocoque forms the lid, and that is a great simplification. When the Veyron came out, it had 1001 horsepower, which at the time was amazing, but not really a problem for the 8-liter engine. 200 horsepower per liter should be possible with such an engine, and the Chiron in the last version had exactly that. So to match that, and with 800 horsepower already from the electric drivetrain, Bugatti only needed 800 horsepower from the combustion engine. And you can even do this with a 4-liter V8 turbo engine. But Mate Rimac knows how the business works, and that Bugatti needs something unique. One possibility was also to take off the turbochargers of the W16 engine and making it naturally aspirated with 100 horsepower per liter. But intake and exhaust length for each cylinder are different in such a VR bank, and that wouldn't be ideal. Also, you would have to explain to customers why you take off the turbochargers, halve the power, and sell them the same engine for more money. So Rimac called Cosworth and said he needs a V16 engine, naturally aspirated and with 1000 horsepower. With the latest Cosworth projects, that wasn't too hard to reach, and they could even reduce RPMs down to 9000. Check out my video about the new Bugatti drivetrain for all infos on that. So that is something you can sell to customers, a unique V16 engine. If we take a look at the car, it looks very familiar, because all lines are still there. But Rimac did 4 main changes which transformed the car. First of all, the cooling. VW's philosophy is to avoid cooling outlets on the front hood to create a more elegant car. With Rimac now, they integrated cooling outlets just in front of the windscreen, which allows them to smoothly accelerate cooling flow into the ambient air, in other words, for less drag. Also, if air goes up, car goes down, so that produces some downforce. Because of the large cooling channels either side, the front trunk became very thin, but also deep. And that creates a bag with a very bespoke shape, which you can show off in the hotel lobby. And let's stay with aerodynamics. Another big change is the diffuser. Usually, the rear crash element is in the way, but Bugatti made the diffuser strakes become the crash structure. And so, the diffuser can be much higher, and it already starts at the driver's seat. So, it's a 2-meter long diffuser, and the engine is sitting in between the channels. The drivetrain is even tilted to make space for the diffuser. The result of a long, good working diffuser is now that the suction peak sits further forward, which creates a better downforce distribution, and it also creates more downforce overall. And let's keep in mind that downforce from the diffuser is around 4 times more efficient than downforce from a wing, so you can create the same downforce for less drag. Bugatti managed to keep the same weight as the Chiron with around 2 tons. And because of that weight and the speeds the tourbillon will go, it's important to not produce too much downforce, as this would overstress the tires. So they just want to counteract lift, and so they keep the active wing inside. It will only come out for functions like an air brake. Not quite ideal seems to be that the air exiting the front radiators will hit the engine intake at the side. Usually on a car like this with all intakes at the side, you would try to exit the air in the middle, but that's hard to do here with Bugatti's centerline design. Very nice is also the exhaust integration above the diffuser exit, which will support its function. And the whole rear end seems to consist of 2 parts, the upper designer bodywork and the floating diffuser underneath. And this rear end looks very familiar. The next big transformation are the doors. Until now, Bugatti's had a simple door like every other car, and although the car is a technical masterpiece, opening the door wasn't impressive. Because of the C-shaped sideline, that also created quite a risk to bump your head. So for the tourbillon, they changed that and they now have butterfly doors. That doesn't just look more dramatic and is underlining the uniqueness of the car, it also gives you a lot more headroom when entering, and it removes a huge part of the sills. And that in return also allows to have a better extraction from the front wheel arch and hence better working front diffusers. And because of that new door structure, they now have this B-pillar support element. And another small detail with a huge effect on the rest of the car, the seat adjustment. Instead of a mechanism to move the seat forward and rearward, the seat is fixed, can be mounted 33 mm lower, and you can instead adjust the pedal box. That way, the passengers are sitting lower, which gives less frontal area and more aggressive proportions. And Rimac understands that cars in this category should be a piece of art. Every part should be nice to look at, just like a nice watch. And this is where the name tourbillon comes from. And it seems to be a popular name for nice engineering, because Rimac's friend and mentor Christian von Koenigsegg used the same name for his unique Gemera gearbox. Check out my other video to learn all about that and its connection to the Opel Calibra DTM car. So instead of using lots of screens, Bugatti is focusing on reducing digital stuff and having more analog technology. So the car will still be nice to look at in decades' time. Bugatti increased the price to now 3.8 million euro. And from a business point of view, that's a bit of a concern, because for the first time in the last 20 years, Bugatti develops their car new from scratch. They are also using suppliers now that they are on their own, for example Brembo for the brakes and Cosworth for the engine. And at the same time, they reduced the number of cars from 500 down to 250. It's great to make the car more exclusive, but to compensate that, the price was not increased enough. So if we leave special models aside and say that 500 Chirons were sold for 2.6 million euro, that results in 1.3 billion euro of revenue for a car that took very little development cost. And if they now sell 250 tourbillons for 3.8 million euro each, that results in 950 million euro for a car which was developed new from the ground up. So we can be sure that there will be special models coming, but let's hope that their business model works out and they didn't dig their own grave here. But on the other side, cars which don't earn the manufacturer money are usually the best collector cars. So what do you think about the new Bugatti Tourbillon? Let me know in the comments below and check out my other videos for more.